In today's show, the Blazers are addressing the elephants in the room, and so are we. What's going on with Anfernee Simons and Deni Avdija and their struggles to open the season? Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen. Coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, we are addressing the elephants in the room. And apparently, there are several of them. What I want to talk about today is a team meeting that happens during the Blazers film session at practice. Talk Anfernee Simons, who has struggled to begin this season, to put it lightly, and Deni Avdija, whose integration into the lineup has been less than smooth, and after 10 games as a starter, he is no longer that. We'll get into all of that in today's show, but let's start with a little bit of news that came out of practice today. When you get walloped at home by 45, the second worst home loss in franchise history, you got to talk about it. The Blazers, according to my parsing of reports, full disclosure, I did not attend Blazers practice today. I'm watching the practice videos provided by the team. So this is reporting in part and in all, thanks to the people who do cover the team every day and do go out to practice, and I appreciate them. According to what the assembled media was told by Rob Williams and Tumani Kamara at practice today, seems like the Blazers had a pretty serious film session. And at the serious film session, what they did was they addressed the elephants in the room. That's what Rob Williams described it as. I believe he was just misusing the idiom elephant in the room. But I like to think that the Blazers' problems are myriad, such that there are multiple elephants. There are many that they need to address, and they're going one by one with these giant gray peanut-eating problems. And they're like, all right, come here, Ellie. Come here, Babar. I probably should have got a third elephant joke for the rule of threes, but I just don't. Dumbo drop elephant. There we go. That's your rule of threes. Come here, Dumbo. Yeah, they're talking to all the elephants. Tumani Kamara says it's important to air things out as a family. It's important to discuss them. I don't want to paint this as a unique. As I'm recording this, also, I haven't seen specific reporting on details that were not in the public videos from people who are in there in person. If those do come out after I have recorded, I will update you on them tomorrow. It's 5 days a week wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. That's the magic of it. But I respect the work of people who do this. So I will obviously do my best to aggregate it. But as from my read on it, I don't want to paint this as something like they had a team meeting and it was this big deal. There is a sort of a tendency to do that after these bad games, is to create some sort of origin point or flash point in the season that was like, well, then they had a meeting after the game. Yeah, they talked about it. They sucked. On Sunday night, they sucked, and they didn't play hard, and they quit, and they very clearly quit. And so what do you have to talk about when you very clearly quit? Why did we quit? Why did we collectively not play hard? Why did we decide midway through the first quarter that tonight wasn't our night and nobody brought any energy to lift them out of it? Maybe Delano Banton getting up 18 shots was lifted someone's spirits a little bit, but that wasn't exactly the infectious energy that carried across the rest of the team. That was just Delano Banton getting 18 shots up because that's what he does, baby. Legend in the usage stat. This is a normal thing that teams do, is when you get walloped, you talk about it. And this wasn't a players-only meeting. To hear Tumani Kamara tell it, it was something that happened during the film session on Monday morning at the Blazers practice facility, initiated by Chauncey Billups, the head coach of the team, who typically runs the freaking film sessions. This is a normal practice stuff. But what is different this time is that this was an airing of grievances. This was an early Festivus celebration, is what it sounds like, according to Tumani and Rob Williams. Is basically like, they had to address the elephants. There are several of them. So, I don't think this is the Blazers mutinying against the coach, although you can write whatever fan fiction in your head you would like. I think this is more like, hey, fellas, there's 71 games left. If we quit now, we're going to have a lot of miserable nights. What do we need from one another in order to just lose with dignity, quite frankly? To play games that are within the spirit of the sport and not games where you clearly are not trying, a collect a paycheck game like they had on Sunday evening. But I think one of the most telling parts of this story, and boy, do I love when Rob Williams talks. Dude is funny. He's honest. He's a casual swearer, which is pretty fun, I guess, unless you write for a traditional outlet and you're not allowed to write swears, or a large national podcast network where they prefer you not to swear. I respect the biz. But like, Rob's great. I hope he's. I've said this before. I hope, like, selfishly he's a Blazer for a long time, because he's just a fun interview. In reality, he's probably not. He's probably a short timer. But Rob said something that I think this was the most telling part of this whole anecdote, this whole story that was relayed by Tumani and Rob Williams. Rob said that this was the type of conversation that wouldn't have happened last year. And when they had similar things where it was like, hey, you need to play harder. You need to do this so I can do this. If you holding guys accountable, you got to rotate and help on when they're watching. When they're watching film, you have to fight over that screen, or you have to set a real screen, or you have to cut with purpose, because if you have a lazy 45 cut, what is happening to the backside of the defense? They're watching you lazily walk through. They don't care, right? When you're holding guys accountable and holding your coworkers accountable and your peers accountable for how they play and holding yourself accountable for how you play, there can be some uncomfortable conversations. You sucked right there. And you need to be better. And we are calling you out because that is unacceptable. How can you call yourself one of the vets? Or how can you hope to ever be something in this league if you don't play like that, depending on who they're addressing, obviously, right? Speaking of fan fiction, I'm writing some right now. But Rob said that they wouldn't have done this last year. It's a type of conversation that wouldn't have taken place. And then he said something interesting. He said, we wouldn't have even done it earlier this year. To me, that's, if you're looking for a flashpoint, it's this type of loss and this type of performance in Game 11 in November, staring down months of basketball, right? You don't get a real break until February. You're standing down 100 and some days of basketball in front of you. Oh no, we better bring it. I think the All-Star break's about Game 55, so it's like you have 45 games left before you get go on vacation and leave these coworkers. You're stuck on the pirate ship. It doesn't wait for you. You play, Tuesday and Wednesday and Sunday, I believe, is coming. I think this is the telling part, is that the Blazers are not a team that naturally does this. And Rob said this wasn't like a scheduled thing. This was like a natural part of just like, hey, we need to talk because it's practice. And he said some of it was addressed in the team's group chat prior to it. And like they're doing a better job of being honest and having these hard conversations. But it wouldn't have happened last year, and it wouldn't have happened earlier this season. I think this can be a good thing. It is not a clear demarcation of this is going to get better from here, because the talent is the talent, right? And the coach is the coach. Shoot, the GM's the GM, the owner is the owner, as long as we're going the whole way up. But I think this is telling for a team that doesn't have that like strong emotional core. Who leads the charge? Chauncey Billups initiates it, then everyone kind of feels comfortable making these calls. If this is a thing that can help them go forward, this is a meaningful moment. If this is just a thing that happened because you lose by 45 and you got to talk about it, this is just a thing that happened. But if they did address the elephants in the room and they are holding each other accountable, some of those elephants are starting at point guard, at least one of them. Anfernee Simons has stunk to begin this year. Capital S. Probably all caps, honestly. He has stunk. Ant has been bad. Not like, you can say it lightly. Ant struggled to begin the year. He's been off his game, hasn't been able to find his shooting stroke. He sucked. The dude has been a bad basketball player. And that's the elephant. It's not the only elephant. As Rob Williams pointed out, there's several of them. But Anfernee Simons is a weird, strange domino in the Blazers' rebuilding process, and a domino that they just keep holding in their hand, waiting for the right tile to present itself. If you play dominoes enough, chasing a tile can be a mess. Let's talk about this strategy, because the Blazers are not throwing bones. They're just kind of waiting for you to make the move, for the move to present itself. Let's talk Anfernee Simons and what it means for the whole ripple effect of the Blazers rebuild in the second segment. Join me there, won't you? First, though, I want to tell you about Mint Mobile. You know, with big wireless providers, what you see is never what you get. Somewhere between the store and your first month's bill, the price you thought you were paying magically skyrockets. With Mint Mobile, you'll never have to worry about gotchas ever again. When Mint Mobile says $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, they mean it. Say bye-bye to overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you with premium wireless plans starting at $15 a month. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number. All of it comes with you, along with your existing contacts. Ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile's deal and get 3 months of premium wireless for $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/lockedonnba. That's mintmobile.com/lockedonnba. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/lockedonnba. $45 upfront, payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on a first 3-month plan only. Speed slower, above 40 gigs on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. All right. There are elephants in the room. None bigger and none more obvious than Anfernee Simons being bad to begin this season. It is the thing every season that when things go awry, there is a scapegoat. It seems to mostly be this year, Chauncey Billups. He has earned that title, and boy has he, over the course of his tenure. But Anfernee Simons has received a great deal of vitriol. There is a very vocal portion of the fan base, at least in my experience, someone who has a fair amount of exposure to a broad selection of Blazer fans, that are kind of just over the Anfernee Simons experience. There are some that have been deeply over it and are doing a sort of I told you so parade, and go for it. Enjoy the parade. Make sure you get those symbols to hit on time, right? This is everyone's right is to throw a parade when they need to, sort of. I don't know if I think that, but you have the right to throw a parade. You can do an I told you so parade. I have no problem with that. But Anfernee Simons has stunk it up. He's been stinky. In fact, 2 listeners, Marcus and Nick, both sent similar emails this week asking, like, what do they do? And Nick, more pointedly, something looks off with Anfernee Simons. Whether it is demeanor or attitude or pouting after calls, or just not playing with the verve that he is capable of, or not hustling back on defense, or so many things, something just looks off. And I think the obvious sort of armchair analyst thing is to say Anfernee Simons knows the score of the game. He knows that the Blazers' future does not include him, because the GM said as much in the summer. We're going to do everything we can to build around Shaedon Sharpe and Scoot Henderson, and didn't mention Anfernee Simons by name at all in multiple press conferences over the summer. And Anfernee Simons said at his own exit interview that he, entering year 7, he was ready to play on a competitive team and not be part of a rebuilding process. And guess what? This never happened. They didn't break up. And here's the thing. When the Blazers in February at last year's trade deadline chose not to explore trades for Anfernee Simons, which they probably should have, and one particular podcaster, it's hard to say who, but one particular podcaster was very much in favor of it. And then when they got to June and July, around the draft and into free agency, and they didn't actively, from all the reporting that's out there, they didn't actively pursue trades for Anfernee Simons. One reporter thought that was a mistake, right? Not finding out what the market is, and maybe the market sucked, right? Maybe the market just wasn't any good, and so it never got the type of traction that gets reported by folks who report things, because the Blazers called around and was like, yuck. Like they just didn't get that. And that is part of the challenge of trading Anfernee Simons, is that he is his archetype is not particularly coveted. Not quite point guards who don't defend is not a highly coveted skill set in the league. Ask the Miami Heat. They've been trying to turn Tyler Hero into a much better player for several seasons and have failed to do so. Ask the Warriors what a Jordan Poole deal looked like. And Anfernee Simons might have been better than those gentlemen in the past, but this year's Anfernee Simons is not that. He's not the guy from the past. Anfernee Simons, after his second season in the league, when he became in year 3, when he started to be sort of a regular contributor, right? When he was part of the plan every night, he was an above-average scorer for his positions, according to Clean the Glass, based on combo guards. An above-average scorer at his position on high usage. So like the strength of Anfernee Simons' games is someone who shoots a lot and makes a lot. A high usage, high efficiency player. And last year it's slipped a little bit. The usage went up and the efficiency dropped a little bit, but he was still an above average for combo guards and above average score on a points per shot basis, right? Like he was worse last year. He had a really good December, but he was really bad in January and February, and they kind of found it in March. But but he still ended the season overall as slightly above average at his position in the scoring efficiency with a big hike in usage. And it's like, yeah, you have the ball more, you have more shots. It's your show. The efficiency is going to come down in a very believable way. But this year, his usage has dropped a little bit, right? As they try to incorporate a little more Deni Avdija, as they try to, as Tumani Kamara tries to expand his role. You're getting more Scoot Henderson offense there, and it's like, and Anfernee Simons, his usage has dropped a little bit from extremely high level, use every possession type of usage, being possessions you shoot, get fouled, turn the ball over, create an assist, the way Clean the Glass does it. So like it drops from that level down to from 97th percentile last year for combo guards down to 87th percentile, but his efficiency has plummeted. So he's still a very high usage guy, but the efficiency is now in the 10th percentile for combo guards. And maybe it's like percentiles, Mike, help me out here. Let's just go with some counting stats. He's shooting 46% on twos, making half of his twos, and he's shooting 30% on threes on nearly 8 attempts per game. He's scoring 17.5 points per game. As when he's been a full-time starter the last 2 years, he's averaged 21 and then 22.5. It's a big drop in efficiency and a big drop in scoring. His assist percentage is down a little bit. His turnover percentage is up a little bit. But I don't even think the passing speaks to what we've actually seen with Anfernee Simons. Last year, what I valued about Ants was not even the shooting and all that stuff, which was valuable, but it's that he got attention from defenses. He got attention and from defenses in a way that no one else on the roster did, accepting double teams and then getting the ball out when you get 2 on the ball. You have value for the rest of your teammates, even if you don't create an assist, you create an advantage. And that's like actually what good players do, is they create advantages every time down the floor. And Anfernee Simons was maybe the only player on the team that could regularly create an advantage and give the other players that he was playing with a chance. Like I actually thought he was valuable in that way. I think this year his playmaking has really, really dropped. There's been some moments where you've seen it be a little bit better. The game against the Spurs, I thought he was pretty good, and he's had some nights. And again, like the raw assist percentage totals, the raw assist totals, a little lower raw assist totals, but assist percentage about the same. But you watch him, the way he used to take on double teams this year he's not nearly as good. And then there's the body language stuff. Anfernee Simons looks miserable when he's playing. Some of it may just be that he's bricking shots and he's miserable, but some of it is just the reality of this, right? Like scoring efficiency down, turnovers a little bit up, not nearly as good of playmaker as I thought he was last season, or advantage creator is the word I'll use. And he looks miserable, just body language stuff, like, again, armchair therapist things. But some of the miserableness is because he's playing poorly. Some of it might be the situation. When they didn't choose to trade him in February and they didn't choose to trade him in July and they brought him in here, this was always going to be weird. because there is some organizational investment in Scoot Henderson, and there is some organizational investment in Shaedon Sharpe, and Anfernee Simons is entering he's extension eligible, contract extension eligible, and he will enter the final year of his deal next year. And he certainly could be unsettled about his future, knowing that it is indeed uncertain, and that could be leading to some of the bad body language stuff and all of those things. But even if it's not, like even if he's grumpy because he's playing poorly, right? And then that's life. Right? Like he's just dealing with because he's just been a lot worse this year. And like what goes into being a lot worse, I think there's just some unknowable variables here, and there's no reason for us to speculate beyond the obvious, right? Like the situation is unsettled and he's playing poorly. If you are screaming for them to just bench him, is that really a solution? Does that work anywhere, to just straight up not play him? Like, here's the problem. Scoot Henderson has not been better than Anfernee Simons. As bad as Ant has been, Scoot Henderson has not been demonstrably better in any way than Anfernee Simons. He has also not been very good. The Blazers' best guard this year has probably been Delano Banton. And that in and of itself is the problem with where they're at in this rebuild. They can't ditch Anfernee Simons because benching him is a sort of team chemistry nightmare on a team with already maybe some dicey chemistry. And you might be saying, who cares? It's 15 dudes on the roster. It is a delicate balance. It is the art of coaching a team is the balance of this. Can you play him a little bit less? Yeah, sure, absolutely. You can play him a little bit less. But I don't think there's a world in which Anfernee Simons is healthy, getting a healthy scratch. That's bonkers, right? It's just not a reality where, based on his tenure, based on his talent relative to the people who he'd be being benched for, and based on his straight up his salary, it's just not a world where that happens. And quite frankly, the difference in Scoot Henderson playing 25 minutes and 31 minutes, I think, is largely meaningless for his development. It's not like Scoot's playing 12 minutes a night. He's getting half the game. And when he's played well, they've let him close and he's played a little bit more. He just straight up hasn't really earned it yet. And Delano Banton, I think we've seen him when the role gets expanded. In the right matchups and the right situation, Delano can be a weapon. If you expand it beyond that, it's dicey, right? It's a little bit messy. And then there's some folks who are saying, and I think this is an opinion that some friends have shared with me and that I just straight up don't agree with, is that Blazers have to play Anfernee Simons because his trade value is to go up. Who is going to get fooled by 6 good weeks of Anfernee Simons? Which NBA GM is going to see Anfernee Simons have a kick-ass game and say, we must trade for him? They all watch the games. They're much more informed than me. And I'm not going to get fooled by 6 weeks of Anfernee Simons. Like, get out of here. Use that big elephant brain you got. Like, come on. The trade value is established over your career. He's played 6 seasons in the NBA. They know what he is. He's a not quite point guard who can't defend. But what he is good at is being a high usage, high efficiency player. He could add some value as a scorer and as probably a bench guy on a really good team, depending on the roster. But the role would be scoring guard, right? Someone who they need pop from the backcourt, whether that's starter or off the bench, playing in the 24 to 34 minute range. People say like he has to be a 6-man. I don't know. Would he for sure be a 6-man on every roster in the East? Look at the standings. There's some teams that are making playoffs probably could use what Anfernee Simons in theory brings. But here's the mess of it. They can't bench him. Scoot hasn't been better. They don't have a solution, and they walked themselves into this. By inaction in February and inaction in the offseason, they create a situation where trades don't really happen in the NBA until January. They kind of happen right up at training camp, and then you wait till some trade restrictions lift in December, and then within a few weeks of that, the first trade usually happens in the NBA, and then there's a bunch of action around the trade deadline. But we're talking like December and then into February. We're weeks and likely months away from a real Anfernee Simons trade getting any traction. And before they get there, They don't have a bunch of great solutions behind him. He's not really blocking Scoot Henderson's development necessarily. I think that's just kind of a talking point, but not actually a reality. What's happening is that Anfernee Simons just stinks right now, and it's a problem. I don't have a solution here. The solution is always the simplest one. He needs to play better. I don't think that they're doing anything different with him this year than that there's not allowing him to be the best version of himself. I think he's just kind of sucked. And they need him to be better to have a chance. And he needs to be better just for his own personal happiness, right? Like I would prefer that Anfernee Simons has a good time, smiles and enjoys himself while out on the court, and just has some games, right? Because averaging 18 and averaging 18 and under 5 dimes as a starting point guard, it's like, it's dicey. I think one of the challenges with trading Ant, real quick, and I'm going a little long here, is like, it's not that the contract is too big. It's that there aren't enough teams who value his archetype to be willing to make the money work. And there's a whole bunch of teams who are way up against it in terms of this, in the new salary cap situation with the second apron, et cetera, such that the pool was already going to be small because like non-point guards who can't defend are not, combo guards who can't defend are not a highly sought after type of player. Plus the new CBA situation that has probably chilled some of the larger money trades. And he has struggled. And it's like, it puts the Blazers in a weird spot. It is their decision to try to exercise patience may eventually pay off. But in this moment right now, it seems to be biting them in a way that only someone who speculates about the team on a regular basis into this very microphone could have possibly seen coming. Oh, and hundreds of you out there as well. Simons can play better, though. He's capable of it. Because I don't think they're doing anything new with him. The challenge for Deni Avdija is that it's all freaking new, and it's been a bumpy ride. The integration of Deni Avdija into the Trailblazers roster has been one that looks pretty dang messy and has now moved Deni to the bench after 10 games as a starter in a lineup that just straight up did not work. Is the new one going to be better? We'll see, but they had to change something, and Deni was the person who ended up being the change. But I asked Chauncey Billups about how they were trying to incorporate Deni, and he shared some thoughts with me, and I will share them with you in the third segment. Join me there, won't you? First, though, let's talk about FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook and an official sportsbook of the NFL. And you can tackle all your NFL action on FanDuel because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports book partner of the NFL. Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond, and you are still listening to Locked On Blazers. I got a great question from a listener who asked, this is for the real heads. Has anyone asked Deni Avdija if he's sleeping on an air mattress? That question comes courtesy of listener Tegan, who is, of course, referencing DeAndre Ayton, who was the Blazers' big trade acquisition last year, who said part of his early season struggles were because he was sleeping on an air mattress. DeAndre Ayton, of course, makes $35 million a year and did not have access to purchasing mattresses due to his giant paycheck. I don't think Deni Avdija is sleeping on an air mattress. I think he's just missing layups. Deni has struggled. I think Deni has played poorly, and the Blazers have utilized him poorly, and he is a rocky fit with this roster. All of those things are true at the same time. And I asked Chauncey Billups about this. I asked him before the games, like, what do you make of the first 10 games of the Deni Avdija era? And this was before the debacle against Memphis, but it was at that moment, Chauncey Billups' pregame, he just told us that Deni was moving out of the starting lineup. So, I knew that they had decided to make this change, but I didn't know that he was going to go scoreless in 13 minutes against in a 45-point loss and like add to what had already been a rocky start. But Billups said like part of the adjustment for Deni is that he's never been traded before and he's a young guy and this is all new to him, and the sort of like integrating to a new team is a challenge for someone like that. And then he said something that I thought was pretty honest and pretty open about it. He said, I haven't done a good job with Deni. He said, Deni is such a driver. He's such a get to the middle of the floor type of driver that I haven't created enough space for him to have those opportunities. What Chauncey Billups is saying there, without saying it, is my man DeAndre Ayton is standing at the foul line every single trip down the floor and has been for 7 seasons, and that's where he's going to be at. If DA isn't handling out top and running the Blazers' little dribble handoff series that tends to go nowhere and kill some clock, he is usually operating in his office, which is at 15 to 17 feet from from elbow to elbow, like basically from the foul line to side of the foul line to side of the foul line. That's where DeAndre Ayton lives. That's the middle of the paint. Those are driving lanes. DA, he stops his rolls there often. He spaces to there comfortably when folks drive. Like he wants to stand at 19 feet. DeAndre Ayton's in the middle of the court. And on the starting lineup with DeAndre Ayton in the middle of the court and without shooters truly around him, they're helping off too, and every time shooting 30% from three, so he's not getting that crazy attention. And Jeremy Grant has had some big nights. He's probably been easily the Blazers' most consistent player this season. Debate about who the Blazers' best player is, I think it's pretty clearly Jeremy. There at the end. It wasn't working. And it wasn't working in like a really, really massive way. In fact, prior to the game against the Grizzlies, I looked up the Blazers, just the stats on the Blazers starting lineup over the first 10 games of the season. And friends, let me tell you, they weren't pretty. That starting group of Anfernee Simons, Toumani Camara, Deni Avdija, Jeremy Grant, and DeAndre Ayton had a net rating of minus 12.2, meaning them outscored by 12 points per 100 possessions. If you're not into per possession stats, which you should be, it's 2024, closing in on 2025, but it's okay. They'd played 160 minutes together and been outscored by 40 points. Getting jacked up. Getting jacked up across 10 games. According to Cleaning the Glass, that group on the floor was in the 7th percentile on offense. They just could not score. Cleaning the Glass, the way they do it, they cut out some of the garbage time. They had a minus 13.8 net rating. And according to Cleaning the Glass, this is the problem. It was the most used lineup of any five-man grouping in the NBA. According to the NBA stats, only one team had played a five-man group more minutes, and it was Tom Thibodeau's starters in New York, who had played one more minute in 9 games compared to how many minutes? 161 compared to 160 in 10 games for the Blazers. Shout out to the Knicks. Those dudes get on the court a lot, and they stay on the court a lot together. But the Blazers, a minus 12 net rating, outscored by 40 points in 160 minutes. You just can't keep bumping up against it. You can't have your big minute lineup get thrashed. Now, it didn't get much better, obviously, with the lineup change. You know who got thrashed? Everybody, and that initial lineup against Memphis was outscored by 18 points. The lineup change moving sharp into the lineup for Deni. It's one game. We'll check in after 10 games, but it's not a solution in and of itself. But Chauncey Billups says, okay, well, I gotta get Deni space. Like, he's such a driver. He's such a I have to change up. It's not so much, and I asked him about this, it's not so much changing up like the calling plays for Deni. It's the function of the offense, the structure of the offense, right? That was a really good, really honest answer, reflective of it's personal accountability and saying and all the things you want from a coach. I haven't done Deni favors. And Deni has, before we get into this, to close the show, Deni hasn't done himself any favors either. He's 6 of 35 from 3. He's shooting under 46% on twos. He's a career 54% shooter on twos. He's the lowest percentage of his career at the rim, according to Clean the Glass, was 63%. He's always been really good at the rim. 63% was the lowest percentage of the rim. 66, 67, 70 last year, right? He's a good finisher. That's what makes Deni special, is that he is a downhill, aggressive driver, plays physical, and finishes when he gets there. Right-hand dominant, but right-hand dominant, right? Like 70% at the rim. You know he's going strong side. You can't stop him. This year, he's shooting 53% of the rim, according to Clean the Glass. A massive reduction, right? Like a huge drop. It's about 16% in reduction from his worst season prior to that, right? Like 10 percentage points, but 16% worse. According to Basketball Reference, Deni Avdija is 15 of 31 on layups this season. That isn't DeAndre Ayton, right? Like, some of it you can just see. The lane is clogged for Deni. The Blazers play a lot of very basic one-action offense with no off-ball movements. It's just like it is get it and go. You run some handoff stuff. You run an initial pick and roll. You rescreen. You redribble handoff. You're supposed to attack and kick, and they don't do it well, right? That's the nature of the offense. They don't do it well. And so, like, Deni hasn't benefited from the Blazers offense, but 15 of 31 on layups is a Deni problem. That's not a Chauncey or a Blazers problem. That's 48% on layups. On layups. So of course, I asked Billups, and asked him what, you got to get him more space. You have to have it more functionally. It has to make more sense. So of course, the lineup that Deni Avdija plays the bulk of his minutes with in the first half is a 2-big lineup featuring Donovan Clingan and Rob Williams. If one center was getting in the way, why not 2, baby? I think these are the elephants in the room. The Blazers have a bunch of problems, and the roster does not offer obvious solutions, and the person making the decisions about how those solutions should be implemented knows the problem and refuses to address them. Chauncey Billups told me point blank period, you got to open up the floor and give Deni Avdija more places to drive, and then played him with 2 7-footers with very limited shooting range. That is one hell of a solution to a problem that you have already very obviously identified. There isn't a master shooting lineup and a great stretch 5 to put Deni Avdija in the game to unlock him, and the Blazers kind of have to play their dudes, right? Toumani Camara is part of the plan. Scoot and Shaden and Ant and Jeremy Grant are going to play. DeAndre Ayton is going to play. Donovan Clingan's going to play, right? And Rob's, I guess, going to play while he's healthy. You're just not going to put plus shooters out there with Deni to make it easy for him. But when you know the problem and then you double down on it to make it worse, does it make you feel confident that this thing's going to get solved? Not me so much. I think Deni can play better. I think the solution, this is real. This is some real podcasting shit for you. I don't know what they do with Anfernee Simons, and I think his solution is he needs to play a little bit better. And I don't think the Blazers know what they're going to do with Deni, and he also just needs to play better. The solution is that there might not be an obvious one, and those dudes have to play better themselves. I'm telling them to bootstrap it. That's what we're doing 30-some minutes into the show. Yeah, I don't like that. That's not a good plan by me. But, I don't see an obvious fix, right? Usually I would offer, hey, they could try this. You could go super small, I guess, and play Deni at the 5, but that is going to have its own problems other places. I don't know. Deni needs to make layups. I think some of the three-point shooting is if you look at his shot chart, he's taken 3 jumpers outside of the paint the entire season. He's taken more threes than he has in the past. His three-point rate is up, but he's mostly getting into the paint, but his three-point rate is up. But I think he's taken a lot of threes because there's nowhere to go. And he's like, okay, there's nowhere to go. I don't know how I'm going to fit into this offense, and I'm just going to take an off-the-dribble three-pointer from above the break, something I'm not even good at, right? Deni's just searching for anything because they haven't figured out a way to unlock him. And the Blazers took nearly 50 games to figure out how to use DeAndre Ayton last year too. Another 50 games of figuring out how to best use Deni Avdija just seems like a waste of a season. Hopefully, over the next 10, we'll have a better feel on what they decided. But I will say the early returns on this season leave me with more questions responding to you, dear listeners, than I have answers. That is going to do it for today's show. Come back tomorrow. Blazers play some basketball games. They play Minnesota back-to-back on Tuesday and Wednesday night. We'll recap those games for you here, and I've got a fun guest that will be on the program for Friday's show. More coming next week. It's what we do. Available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. I appreciate you listening. I will talk to you soon.